Hey everyone, today we're going to explore a very interesting feature in Excel. It's called table function. Table function is subtle. There's nowhere you can say trigger that kind of action, but it's actually is following the concept of name range. For example, for a data set, they have a starting point and ending point. You can reference this starting point, say equal to, for example, this one will be A2, and use this special sign and to say 16. This is actually a data range that has been spelled from 2 to G16 and is referenced this kind of data range. For each of the data range, you got a chance to reference by this absolute reference. For example, we try to summarize the total sales from New South Wales state. We can use the formula over here to reference that kind of reference list. Say I'm gonna treat a particular array saying as the reference and then put into the second parameter as the criteria and what is the comparison I'm trying to use. You can use this way to formalize your formulas, but in the long term, the reference by letter and the number actually losing its meaning because we don't know what you're referencing to. So better solution in order to improve the readability of your formulas, you should always name your dataset as a name. For example, in this dataset, I can rename that as sales by state. By rename the data range as a different name, I'm actually have a chance to, for example, state, to call it out by any time that I want to have that. For example, this is data range, so in that way I can improve my formulas by introducing those name range, which is the sales state by name, rather than this kind of reference link. And that's the middle stage. The last stage, if you want to improve your, say, readability of your data set, you should always use table. So table is even better than the name range solution. So you can just insert a table and then you say my table has header. You can say yes. Once my table has header, if we check the name that we have punched into the system memory, we can go into the formulas, go into name manager. You can see I have two. The first one is the one that we just named. It's a name range that with a special icon, the blue, the cell is colored in the blue color. And the second one is the one that we introduced by adding a table. So we can rename this table as different name, say, can say state cells. Once we have that, we did that before, we can say state cells. You can call out this table exactly, but more importantly, for a table, you are actually able to call out the actual column. So for each of the column, you actually has a title for that. For example, I want to just include the date. I can close this square bracket to include just the date. And if I want to swap this with a different column, for example, the state, I can just do this way. So this gave us a hint that how we can improve this kind of formula. So I'm going to write the same formula, but this time instead of say2 to 616, I'm going to say state by sales, and I'm going to use the square bracket. So we know we're trying to calculate the sales column. I can close that. Now the first part is finished. Now we're doing the second one. Second one, do the same thing. We call out the state table, and then we call out a column. The column we're trying to use in just the state. So this one, close that bracket. Now if we hit enter, we got the same result. But by looking at the difference, your formula has clearly communicated your idea. You're trying to use a sum if function to calculate the cells from the state cells table by one of the criteria, which is the state, and the state column equal to this cell, which is the New South Wales. Now we do the same thing for this part. Now you can see if we swap that, we know that this will be the state, and by the last column, which is the cells, close that. First part finish, and second we do the same thing because we know that it's the state, and the column we're referencing is actually the date. Close that, and for the last 16 we say state, and the column we're referencing is the date. It's the date. Then for this part is not the date, this is actually the state. Okay, now we've done this, we have reached the same result, but if you look at the readability of this formula, it's much clearer than this one. We can do the same trick for this part. It just we use the sum ifs function to punch in multiple criteria. You can just append different criteria range and criteria. I always feel like comfortable when using sum ifs rather than sum if because the syntax is much clearer. Okay. So that's one part of the table feature. Table feature has more application and indication for you to design anything. For example, before we have explored that, you can call out any of the column by just typing the name of the table and then use a square bracket to call out. But also, you can also say, I want everything. You can use the hash sign and then square bracket to include the title as well. And this gives us a lot of freedom because it's just one formula. You're actually bringing up the thing that within this table. And with this function, we can say, we can use a filter. For example, we can say equal to filter, equal to filter. And the array is going to be our dataset, state dataset. Include, I can just say for the state and the column, which is the state, I can say everything equals to the new source files. I want to include them. New source files, include them, and close the parenthesis, and then close them. So this will return a full dataset by applying one field to the state column because I only want a state. And then you can improve this formula by introducing the new source files over here, right? Then we can go into this formula. We reference this absolute reference to this dynamic one, close it. And then we can also do a list. For example, this one we can have unique. Let's just sort again this part. What we're having is we're having an individual list about the state. And then I'm going to incorporate that into this cell to have a drop-down list. Go into the data. Going to there's a drop down which is this part. We're going to data validation. We're going to choose list. We're going to choose the source will be here. We can use h1 and hash to include that spell range. For example, I go back. Okay, now I have this list. For example, you have a new data. For example, I have a new day. I have a new data code. Part will be the Queensland, and the size is 400. Once I have this, if I check this, you can see I have this Queensland over here. And if I remove this part, you can see the list has been very neat, very tidy, and everything has been sorted. If you say you have, if you have another date, let's just mimic another state is called ABC and sales is 500. You can see ABC appear to the top because we're using the unique and sort function to sort that. The order is all going to be always in the ascending order. ABC will be the top. If we're going back to check this validation list, ABC is always the top. To keep your sorting behavior very intuitive, then I can just control 1 to format this date into a proper date. And I can use this toggle to actually filter my data by different data range. You can see that it's more dynamic. So that's something that we can discuss further to draw a dashboard like based on this kind of dynamic setting. So that's all for today. Hope you guys enjoy. See you guys in the next one.